All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to our first meeting in June. I will have our city clerk start with our roll call.
Mayor Kelly Clark.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Karen Howe.
Here.
Councilmember Amy Lamb.
Here.
Councilmember Pam Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
Councilmember Sid Gupta.
Here.
Councilmember Roisin O'Farrell.
Here.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. And Councilmember Treen, if you can lead us in the pledge, please. I will read our land acknowledgement. We acknowledge that we are on the indigenous land of Coast Salish peoples who have reserved treaty rights to this land, specifically the Snoqualmie Indian tribe. We thank these caretakers of this land who have lived and continue to live here since time immemorial. All right, first up, I will entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved. Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any questions before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right. We will start now with public comment in the room before we go to Zoom, if anyone signed up. It's just like, Mary?
Good evening, Council. Mary Wichter. I've lived in Sammamish for almost 24 years now. I wanted to speak a little bit. It's on your consent agenda, item 10. It's for the Zaccoose Creek, the OTAC thing for 5 years. I did send in right at 5 because I had to go take photos and everything today. I sent you updated photos of Zaccoose Creek. I live between where Zaccoose Creek and George Davis Creek come down to the parkway, so I'm able to visit fairly regularly. I've been a volunteer member of the Kokanee Work Group since 2017, and when they first put in the culvert, and I had gone to the public meetings, I'm like, you guys need to look at the upland areas. The upland areas have a lot of forceful flows that are not detained, and you're going to have flashy, gushy water that's dirty and brown, and it's going to take the sediments down. And they said, oh, we got this handled. We got it the right size. It'll be fine. Well, sure enough, and I sent you the rain data and stuff, and Mark Cross's boot under it. It did get stuffed with gravel. And I remember this, I think this contract came in front of council last year, and I remember they were going to hire NHC as the other contractor because they were a little bit worried about the parkway itself getting blown out if there wasn't enough room for water. So I thought, well, they should look at that if they think the parkway is going to get blown out. But in the report now, it starts off and it says, yes, there's a lot of sediment that gets translated from uphill areas. In Tamarack, there's 25 houses and 15 houses and then 20 houses that go this way. So there's 60 houses that have really high flows during times of high rain, and those go into Zaccoose Creek, so they rip and shred it. So you will see that the culvert fills up. So there's also a possibility you could go in and remove the gravels, and that might work, but until you really get some of the really high flows taken care of, that's not going to help. I did try to have Lewis Thompson try to do a detention for 2/10 place where 15 of those houses go, and I was not able to get that pushed through. So even though the Lewis Thompson is a nice thing to have and we're going to get a sidewalk with it, it's not really addressing the flooding or the flashy flows. Now in the stormwater CIP, you'll see that there's some money for 2028 to look at the flooding up in the Zaccoose headwaters and the wetland area there. But I guess my message is, I'm not a consultant, I'm not a professional engineer, but what I saw in this last day, I went and photographed yesterday after the rains, there's more freeboard, that's the space between the top of the culvert and the gravel, than there has been before. It's wider. There's pretty small gravels. Kokanee need about walnut size. It's a little bit heavy, it's a little bit bigger than that. And I don't see sediments coming down because there's so many trees and sticks in the way. I think it's kind of reducing those. Also, for the last 2 years, we haven't had a lot of rain. So I actually think you probably could go without doing something for another year. Last year, you chose not to make a decision. I think it's looking probably better than I've seen it. And I'm sorry for the situation that it's in, but it's tough to do streams. They have their own mind. So that's my input.
Thank you. All right, do we have anyone sign up online?
Per the new reasonable accommodation, those who had pre-registered by 3 o'clock today, please raise your hand if you wish to give testimony. Mr. Stickney?
Good evening, City Council. It's Paul Stickney here. Today I sent in materials substantiating this comment, and I believe this is something that needs to be said for the direction of our community. Over the past 25 years, Sammamish has put majority emphasis into the natural environment with policies and plans. But our city has largely ignored environmental housing supplies that optimally meet local internal needs sustainably over cycle of life and for future generations. This would add habitability and riches for our community. It's time to fix this here and now. It's time to do both. Enrich and sustain and stay has evolved over the last 10 years. The alpha version was crafted in 2019 and given to the council in March of 2020. I'd like to read its 7 fundamental sequential parts to you. Part 1, reduce additional supplies of housing types the city has internal surpluses of. 2, quickly add supplies of housing types the city has internal past and present shortages of. 3, sustainably planned for optimally balanced internal housing supplies for recurring generations. 4, suitably sized, desirable, and convenient economic services based on parts 1, 2, and 3. 5, determine citywide transportation and transit systems based on parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. 6, effectively manage and leverage wealth and benefits created by parts 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 above. Then, and only then, add major lane capacity roads if they're ever even needed. To optimally balance housing sustainably for lifetime and legacy, we need more market rate housing from 500 to 1.2 million, more high-end condominiums and townhomes over 1.2 million, and affordable housing priced from 175 to 500. How much more? Between 10,000 and 26,000 housing units. In a markup of the first draft proposed Sammamish comp plan, I recommended in a thorough, in-depth critique, the city only adds 7,000 housing units over the next 10 years, 6,000 in town center, 1K in the Eastman sub-area. And that's a good start, but it's not enough to meet the lowest threshold of 10K. So I propose determining additional housing numbers needed to meet in future comp plans starting in 2034. I expect all 7 of you can support the values and net positive merits of doing this. Make it so, and take a look at the documents I sent today. All right, have a great meeting. Thank you.
That's all for public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much, Krista. All right, so next up we have our Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board vacant position. I think it's Prajakta was unable to interview via Zoom or in person today, but I was just going to read out their response to our question, and then we'll do a balloted vote, and I think Krista's going to show it up on the Zoom. Okay, so our question was, why are you interested in serving on the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board? Their response was, I am an environmental scientist and engineer with 20 plus years of experience. I am a professional engineer in Washington, and my expertise is project or program management. I am a Sammamish resident and a parent in the Issaquah School District. I am passionate about sustainability, environmental education. I've been an active volunteer in ISD schools in STEM, art, and environmental education. And I would like to take my expertise to a higher level and help build up long-term sustainability goals for the community. I live in the Beaver Lake Watershed Management Area and truly enjoy the beauty surrounding Beaver Lake and Beaver Lake Preserve. I would love to do my part to help conserve that. Let me know if you have any other questions. Thanks. So we do have one person for one vacancy, if council would like to vote, and then our city clerk will come grab them. And I will also clarify that Jen did make sure that this person does live within the boundaries for this board.
I'm just trying to get access to one of the drives so I can get the ballot up. Thank you. We will reformat this to save it on the website, but it's a unanimous vote. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. So I believe that is a resounding 7 out of 7. Yeah, a couple were hesitant votes. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for applying. I hope you'll watch this or we can meet you. We do need to pass the resolution appointing, how do I say it? Sorry. I think it's Proj is how they signed their note to us. So for a resolution appointing them to the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board for Resolution 2024-1053. I will entertain a motion for that.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great, thank you and congratulations. Okay, now we have our consent calendar. Councilmember Trine, did you get your questions answered?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I did.
Cool.
I appreciate
Awesome.
it.
All right, does anyone else have anything before we move to pass the consent calendar? Okay, I will entertain a motion to pass the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any questions? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right, thank you so much. Now we will move on to our proclamations. First, we have our Ride Transit Month for June with Councilmember Gupta.
Proclamation for Ride Transit Month, June 2024. Whereas having reliable transportation is a major key towards developing a thriving community, and almost 25% of Washington residents cannot and do not drive and may rely on public transit, and regional transit agencies and transportation organizations are proclaiming June as Ride Transit Month to promote alternatives to driving. And the Sammamish City Council in December 2023 adopted a climate action plan that calls for a 30% reduction of per capita vehicle miles traveled, or VMT, by 2030 relative to a 2016 baseline. And Ride Transit Month celebrates public transportation system and transit riders, showcases the benefits of riding transit, and encourages the community to try transit. And passengers on the east side are now able to use Link Light Rail to travel quickly from Redmond to Bellevue using the 2 line that provides service every 10 minutes, 7 days a week. And developing transit-oriented communities has been shown to enhance health and community connectedness, reduce pollution, and improve traffic safety and circulation. Now, therefore, be it resolved that Mayor Kaylee Clark, on behalf of the Sammamish City Council, does hereby proclaim June 2024 as Ride Transit Month, and want to encourage our residents to observe this month with events and activities to promote public transportation.
Great, thank you. Next up, we have our Pollinator Week with Deputy Mayor Howe.
And I really wish I had a little antenna, because I think that would be appropriate. So proclamation is for Pollinator Week, June 17th through 23rd, 2024. Whereas the City of Sammamish has always been committed to pollinators through habitat restoration utilizing the Sammamish Stewards Program, and Sammamish was designated a bee city in 2022. And whereas since joining the initiative, Sammamish has updated the Integrated Pest Management Plan to include pollinator-friendly language, installed a new pollinator garden and bee city signage, and formed a Bee City Committee dedicated to moving the efforts forward. And whereas the City of Sammamish manages parks, public landscaping, and other public lands that may include greenways and wildlife habitats, and whereas pollinators such as thousands of species of bees, birds, and insects are essential partners in producing much of our food supply, and whereas pollinators provide significant environmental benefits that are necessary for maintaining healthy biodiversity ecosystems in towns and cities, and whereas pollination plays a vital role for the trees and plants of our community, enhancing our quality of life and creating recreational and economic development opportunities, and whereas the City of Sammamish provides recommendations regarding landscaping to promote wise conservation stewardship, including the protection of pollinators and maintenance of their habitats. Therefore, now, Mayor Kaylee Clark, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby proclaim June 17th through 23rd, 2024 as Pollinator Week.
Great, thank you so much. Okay, now we have our monthly presentation on the Comp Plan Town Center and critical areas update with Audrey and David.
David might think we're too far ahead of schedule, so we're going to check.
Yeah, someone page him. Hi, Audrey.
Hi, good evening.
Well, it's nice to see you at least.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for your patience while I got that online, and apologies for not being here in the room. I learned that lesson. We'll go ahead and start off. Good evening, David Pyle, Department of Community Development Director, and I also have Audrey Starcy, our Public Works Director, with me. I believe she's online. We are here for our June 2024 major projects update. We really have appreciated the opportunity to provide information to you all and to the public about what's coming up on the horizon here. So we'll be working through meetings that are anticipated through August with this update. And as you can see, we continue to be very busy with some of these big projects we have going on. Most of the work, as you're aware, is taking place with the Planning Commission. And this work will all be making its way to your desks here in September after the August recess. So going ahead and moving on, before we transition to review of the project meeting timeline, we wanted to provide some detailed information on the status of two very important projects currently underway, the Comprehensive Plan and the Transportation Master Plan. We wanted to make sure everyone out in the public, you all, Planning Commission, anyone who might be listening here, was aware that the first draft of the 2024 Comprehensive Plan was published to the project website, Envision 2044, in early March and has been available for review by anyone interested in that effort. A revised version will be published on June 10th that reflects comments and feedback received from various channels. The Sammamish community and our stakeholders and partners have contributed to this effort greatly, and we appreciate the help with the update process. We've had lots of productive meetings with community members, the tribes, the water and sewer districts, the school districts, et cetera. Really a great process, and have really appreciated everyone's time. We continue to make sure that we want to make sure that everyone's aware that we are still collecting comments on this, and it's never too late to open it up and read it and provide feedback. The best way to submit comment is by sending an email with written comments to comment@envisionsammamish2044.org, or to reach out to myself or one of our planning staff. We'd be happy to meet with anybody who's interested. We will mention this again in a minute, but the Planning Commission is currently working on the draft comprehensive plan. It has several meetings on this topic in June and again in July. And following the commission portion of the process, which is scheduled to wrap up in July, the council will pick up review of the draft plan in September. We also want to make sure to point out that the draft land use plan, as conveyed by the future land use map, has not changed since it was reviewed by the council last fall, and that continues to be the foundation for our development of the plan. Regarding the Transportation Master Plan, we're happy to report that we are on track with creation of the city's first Transportation Master Plan. The plan is guided by previous direction from the council, including best practices and concurrency standards, and includes components of previously approved council plans, such as the recently approved transit plan. The TMP is proposed to be adopted by reference in the transportation element of the comprehensive plan, so that the city can be nimble and make changes to the Transportation Master Plan as conditions allow. Refinements for the plan are planned for 2025. This is the first version of it, knowing that we'll likely be making some changes to it going forward to refine it. The TMP will be presented at the Planning Commission next month, with the public hearing scheduled in August. We're working with our Planning Commission to schedule a meeting when they normally are on recess, so we're very grateful to them for their patience with us as we try to get through all this work. And the council will review the TMP after closure of the Planning Commission process, beginning after the summer recess in September. Going back to the traditional timeline that we had for you, the town center plan and code amendments, this has been a great process as well. We're learning a lot right now. We're holding stakeholder meetings with town center property owners here over the next few days. We'll be providing updates on what's been learned to date and the project's next steps at the June 20th Planning Commission meeting and at the July 16th City Council meeting. With regard to the critical areas update, on June 5th or tomorrow, the project team will meet with the Parks Commission to give them an overview of the project, collect any ideas or feedback offered up by the commission, and make them aware of upcoming City Council and Planning Commission meetings on this topic. We will present the draft critical areas ordinance to the Planning Commission on June 6th for a final review. This includes a matrix showing all the changes that have been made and why they were made. All materials, including a strike draft of the proposed code changes, are included in the agenda packet for the Thursday, June 6th Planning Commission meeting, and are available on the city's website. It's quite a hefty packet, so if anyone's interested, grab a cup of coffee and dig in. Likewise, city staff are always available to help guide you through those sometimes fairly dense documents. So sometimes it's easier if anyone out there in the community is interested and they're having a hard time navigating through a pretty lengthy, dense document, feel free to give us a call. We're happy to help orient people as to where to find things in those documents. The consultant and project team is reviewing the land use element of the comp plan currently. We're wanting to make sure there's cross collaboration between the critical areas update and the comprehensive plan update. And the Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on the draft on July 18th before it is brought to the council in October. Let's see, going on to the transportation master plan. I'll turn it over. We talked a little bit about this, but I want to hand it over to Audrey for any additional comments she might have.
Thank you, David. Actually, you did a great job presenting the TMP, so we're really excited to have more discussions with the Planning Commission in July, and of course, we'll be back in August, date to be determined at this point, but thank you very much, Planning Commission, for your flexibility in meeting in August. We're really looking forward to the public hearing on the TMP. I have a few slides that will actually be incorporated into our 6-year transportation improvement plan presentation that goes into a little bit more detail about some of the other transportation planning documents that we are planning on completing in 25. So David spoke a little bit about the TMP refinement process in 2025. So I'll speak to that a little bit later this evening. I'm happy to take any questions, and back to you, David. Thank you.
Thank you, Audrey. And one more topic. Let's see, where was it in here? Whoops. It's the we didn't highlight it properly. We'll have to work on that. The comprehensive plan. Again, review of the initial draft of the 2024 comprehensive plan has been completed, and staff are now working to incorporate comments from the Planning Commission staff and stakeholders. As previously stated, the second draft will be released on June 10th. I think this is really the one, if you're out there in the community listening, to really dig into. This is after we've worked through a lot of the kinks and edits that we needed to make, and the draft is looking really good. It will include volume 1 and volume 2, which may not mean a lot to anybody, but it's the full comp plan. So it's quite a lengthy document again, and like I said before, if you have any questions or want to help navigating this document, please feel free to reach out. We are in this all day, and we know where everything is located. So if you're looking for something, sometimes it's easier to reach out. On June 6th and June 20th, the Planning Commission will be reviewing development regulation updates associated with the comprehensive plan, and also needed to align with new state middle housing legislation and accessory dwelling unit legislation, HB 1110 and HB 1337. These are going to be some really great conversations with the Commission trying to right size the city's approach to middle housing and accessory dwelling units. We're looking forward to that. That will be this Thursday, and then again continuing on June 20th. On June 20th, the comp plan team will also host an open house at City Hall prior to the Planning Commission meeting to promote the draft plan and to promote feedback from the community. That allows the Planning Commission members to talk with members of the community who might want to have more opportunity to, converse with commission members and staff prior to that meeting. And we're looking forward to hearing from the community in that venue as well.
What was the start time on that open house?
I believe it's 5:30. Yeah. I'll follow up with an email on that specifically. I want to double check the website. 5:30. Yeah, it's right there. Yeah, great. Yep. Thank you. And again, the Planning Commission is scheduled to hold a public hearing on July 25th on the draft of the comprehensive plan to make a recommendation to the City Council. And the City Council's scheduled to pick it up in September after the August recess. And that is the conclusion of the major projects update. If you have any questions, Audrey and I are here to help and happy to answer any questions.
Great, thank you both. Council, do you have any questions? All right, very clear.
And again, I apologize for not being in the room. I'll make sure to do it next time. I was back working at my desk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, next up we have opening of some public hearings. And Audrey, did you have any presentation before I open them or just go straight into?
We do have two brief presentations for both of the, prior to both public hearings, and Greg is joining me online.
Great. So then you'll do the first, we'll open the first, you'll do the second presentation, and then we'll open the second?
Yes.
Awesome. All right, thank you both.
Of course. Well, good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council. So I am joined this evening by Greg Samatino, our Deputy Director of Public Works. For the record, I'm Audrey Starcy, Director of Public Works for the city. We are very excited this evening to talk to you about two important capital plans. Both of these plans are part of our greater citywide capital improvement planning work that we are doing, and we'll be back to you in council later this year with both of those efforts. So the two plans are our Transportation Improvement Plan, or our TIP, and then our SWIP, our Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan. So I believe the agenda has us starting with the TIP. And so we do have a short presentation, and we'll ask to open the hearing after that. Okay, next slide, please. So we do have a few slides just to remind the community of why we have a TIP and how important it is. We'll go over revenue assumptions and then provide an overview of what the TIP is and have a few recommendations and next steps. So you'll likely recognize this slide. This is from two of our prior presentations to council. I'm talking about the importance of a capital plan. And that chart on the right talks about some of the planning phases, which is, we would love to hear back from the community throughout these phases, but often we hear mostly from the community during construction, but there is a long cycle to prepare for a project that goes out to construction. And this very important window that we're talking about tonight is the planning phase of this project. We have programmatic and functional planning phases of a project, and then we get into individual project planning phases as well. For our purposes tonight, we're talking about functional plans or 6-year capital plans. Those plans prioritize funding and projects in the 6-year window. For today, we're talking about 2025 through 2030. Capital plans help improve trust and transparency for the community. This is your plan. So we are here to align our community goals and service expectations through capital planning. Plans also include projects that mitigate risk. Oh, could you go back one more? Thank you. Mitigate risk and improve public safety. And we are proactively looking at our infrastructure, ideally replace or rehabilitate our infrastructure the day before it fails. Our timing is not quite that great, so we try our best. But there are some projects on both plans that have infrastructure improvements that we are proactively looking at rehabilitating. Of course, we include technology and different advancements in the field, and we're always striving towards fiscal sustainability so that we can optimize our resources both internally and externally. Our plans also include capital expenditure forecasts, revenue sources, and funding gaps. And our capital plans are often a requirement for many of our grant and funding partnerships for those opportunities. In the state of Washington, all cities are required to adopt a 6-year comprehensive TIP pursuant to RCW 3577010. So one question we're typically asked is, where's the big list of projects, right? We know we have a much longer list of projects, and why isn't my project on the TIP? And it does go through quite a bit of effort for staff to put these documents together. Projects can first arrive for our consideration through public or community requests to improve infrastructure. They can arrive via any type of planning documents, as well as just staff observations or ongoing maintenance needs. I did want to remind the community that we've already spoken to a little bit about our updates earlier with our comprehensive planning efforts, as well as our transportation master plan that is in progress right now with the planned completion date of December 2024. We've already spoken a little bit this evening about refinements to our TMP, or transportation master plan, that we're planning on in 25. And we have a lot of very important planning documents that we're working through in 25 as well, that will all be rolled up into our TMP next year. So those range from our bike and pedestrian mobility strategic plan, our pavement management strategic plan. There are some studies that are incorporated into the transit enhancement program of our TIP. Those studies are planned to be completed in 2025, as well as a citywide streetlight strategic plan in 2025. We're beginning our Intelligent Transportation System, or ITS, strategic plan at the end of 25 with a 2026 completion date. And you'll see many corridor studies and plans in the TIP as well. All of these very important planning work is really important to do at the same time. And we're really looking towards our fulfilling our community goals as we're looking at these plans in the future. And often these plans will result in changes to our project lists. And some of those projects can be incorporated into our ongoing programs, and others will lie in different categories in our TIP that we'll see this evening. Next slide, please. This is just a different way to look at some of our planning work that we do have planned for next year. So the dark blue colors represent some more of our programmatic or comprehensive planning efforts that are typically done about every 5 to 10 years. The kind of middle blue coloring there are some of our functional plans that I was talking to earlier. And then the light blue, the corridor studies and plans on the very bottom of your screen. Those are plans that are related to a very specific project and purpose, and are reflected in our TIP this evening. Next slide, please. We're happy to answer any questions about revenue assumptions for the TIP as we talk through the TIP this evening. You will find in the guide that supports the spreadsheet a list of funding sources for every single program and project in the TIP. The TIP has a lot of our funding is from the 340 fund, which includes real estate excise tax, or REIT, and that's forecasted at $3 million a year. It also includes traffic impact fees, or TIF, and that's forecasted at a little over $2.5 million each year. We are planning on a TIF update in 2025 as well. So we'll look at those fees next year a little bit more. And the 340 can also include contributions or allocations from the general fund as well. You'll see in the spreadsheet and in the guide, stormwater allocations from the Stormwater Capital Fund, or otherwise known as 438 Fund. At the top of your spreadsheet, you'll see both 340 Fund and 438 Fund. That's what those numbers represent, are the transportation capital and the stormwater capital funds. Stormwater is an enterprise fund. It can only pay for stormwater components. So that's why those typically that allocation in the TIP is a little bit lower than 340 allocation. And of course, we love any opportunity that we can to partner on projects, whether that's with a state, local, or federal grant opportunity, or a partnership with another agency, with schools, or private partnerships as well. Next slide, please. To the right, you'll find a few screenshots of our capital plans. So the spreadsheet that is pretty hard to read on this slide is the overall spreadsheet, but we do send the entire document to Washington State Department of Transportation once it's adopted. The funding guide is where you'll find many more details to each project, and all this information will be rolled into our citywide CIP later on this year. The list on the left talks about how we've placed projects into different programs or categories with similar projects that have the same intent. And it also dives a little bit into what's included in the guide, and of course a website link where you can find all of the information. A little bit closer view of some of our projects listed here. We do have several overarching categories. So everything found in green on this spreadsheet are ongoing programs. Projects that are added to our the yellow category here, the second box, are projects that have intent of improving traffic safety and non-motorized components to our network. The blue box here is our connection projects with the opportunity to provide new roadways to our overall network connection. And the gray box, the fourth box down, is our corridor improvement projects. And we're taking an opportunity to create and adopt a corridor plan for every single one of our corridors. This is equivalent to mini master plans that you would find in a park planning process or stormwater basin plan. So critical to understanding how that infrastructure will be developed over 20 years. So looking forward to completing those. And then finally, our purple category consists of regional projects that are significant that the city may choose to invest in the future. So next steps, we would love to hear from you. The next slide talks about how we can receive comment, and we would love to hear back from the community and of course council. We are asking that council open the public hearing this evening, and we plan to close the public hearing on June 18th. And then after the plan is adopted, hopefully on June 18th, we will transmit the adopted plan to WASDOT by July 1st, which is the requirement of the RCW. Again, we would love to hear from you. If you could please reach out to cityclerk@sammamish.us with your written comments. And of course, we invite the community to provide comments in our public hearing this evening on the 18th as well. We plan to consolidate all responses, excuse me, into one sheet, and we'll place them on the web page for the tip itself, so you can see those as we get comments in. We'll be updating that every few days, and those comments will be added to our agenda bill for June 18th as well. And I'll hand it back to you, Mayor, if you'd like to open the public hearing this evening. That concludes our presentation.
Great, thank you so much, Audrey. Okay, council, so I'll open the hearing, we'll do public comment, and then we'll start in with our questions. I'm opening the 2025-2030 Transportation Improvement Plan public hearing, and we do have one or two comments on, this will be specifically for the Transportation Improvement Plan in the room, and then we'll see if anyone signed up online. So Syed is first.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and the Council. Just for the record, my name is Syed Fabian. I live in Sammamish, 21714 Northeast 29th Street in Sammamish. I sent out an email to the Council, copy to Audrey and the Public Works, and outlining a number of questions that I have. I want to compliment Audrey and her team for providing some subsequent information that came to us yesterday that addresses and answers some of those questions, but not all of them. So I'm just quickly going through a number of issues that I would like the council to kind of consider and pay attention to it. One of them is that really it would be helpful that when we have a document like this, we would have some graphics, some reference and some maps and all that would help us to understand exactly in some of those issues, and also give us a little bit more time than 24 hours before the council meeting to review 42 pages of a document about the individual projects. As I said, that most of the comments that I made and the suggestions that in an email, I don't want to go through it, but I want to kind of highlight some of the important ones. One of them was, I'm just curious, in the past few years, every year that we're going through this, concurrency becomes an issue, and there are projects on the list that they made reference to it. Oh, we need this intersection improvement, we need this signalization for concurrency. And for unknown reason, there is no reference to concurrency. The only one that I saw that one of the projects was actually taken off, 220th at the 40th turn lane, that they made reference that no longer we need it for concurrency. So that begs the question that, have we resolved the concurrency issue? That's why we don't have any project. What is the relationship between the TIP projects and the status of concurrency? Second, that you see a lot of reference to the non-motorized transportation, but there is no dedicated fund for what I call it controlled crosswalk. In the city, we have only very few designated crosswalk at mid-block or at the intersections that you don't have controlled four-way stop or a signal. The other one is the lack of recognition of, and I don't know if that is something that the council probably have already looked at it. The reference to build some roadways within the town center. So I believe Southeast 8 is one, Southeast 6 is one of them, and I was wondering if there is any potential funding by the developers to contribute to that rather than using the general fund for some of those roadways that those developers would directly benefit from it. The other one is the issue of the Sahali that is close to me. As you know, that over the years I've been very passionate about getting some improvement that. But when you look at the numbers, Council, is that the only money that is set aside for the next 6 years is the money that is set aside for the design up to the 30%. Nothing, I didn't see any money for the construction.
Thank you so much. Yeah, sorry, we don't have a warning beep anymore. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm the warning. All right, Mary?
Hi, Mary Wichter from Sammamish. First, I do want to thank Audrey and her staff and all the people that work on the materials. I know it was put together and didn't arrive until I didn't even get through the TIP after it was updated, but I did glance at it at the beginning, so I really, really want to thank you for, in your presentation, saying that we get until the 18th to give comments, and then that way people that don't even know it was online would have a chance to look at it, because I am certainly not the traffic expert that Syed is, but there are other people. I did want to make a few remarks, though. Just in the title, you have one project called the 6th Street. I forget if it's southeast or northeast. If you just Google 6th Street Sammamish, it shows somewhere over by the roundabout on Inglewood, and I think you mean the 6th Street between the roundabouts and the 8th. It doesn't exist yet. It would be between 228th. So if you could clarify that, because otherwise it's just really confusing, and that's under TR 134 connection. I did want to say I've given public comment before that I think connectivity is absolutely essential in everything we do, so I hope any of these road projects, you would look for connectivity, pathways, passageways, wildlife corridors, bikes, trikes, trucks, baby carriages, walking backwards, whatever people do. So I just think that that's really important. I also read that the TIP is not a budget. It does not commit the city to anything nor obligate you. I think it's really important with everything that we're doing with town center and growth and the housing bills. I'm sure that the traffic counts that I think are taken each April, I haven't seen those published in a while, but I heard they're like 20% less than they used to be. Things went down in COVID and they really haven't gone back up. There's a ton of people that work from home or change their lives or other things. So I know in all the past discussions with the TIP and TMP with prior councils, there was a big concern about traffic and how are we going to handle things, and I really think that the world and life has changed, so I hope that will be taken into account. And then just as one example, I didn't write down the number, but it's the Inglewood Sidewalk Gap Project. I believe you mean as you're going into the roundabout at 216th. There's no sidewalk on either side for just a little bit, but there is sidewalk and there's kind of a paved path before that on the north side. And I'm going to suggest to you from critical areas, there's not a lot of development, and like where in Tiburon, where the mayor lives, on that side. I don't think you actually need to do the sidewalk on that side. I think you could just do it on the north side. And I don't know if you have to change the paved path over, but I think you could save some things. I know they put more gravel there based on comments maybe I made last year, but I think you could do some savings there. But that area is super important to walk through, so at least get a sidewalk on one side if you can.
Thank you. All right, did we have anyone online for the tip?
Those who had pre-registered by 3 o'clock today, please raise your hand if you wish to give testimony. Also, if you have signed up, could you please have your legal name as your name so we know who you are on the attendee list? Thank you. Mr. Stickney, you're muted. Thank you.
There we go. Hello, City Council, staff, consultants, if any, online. Appreciate the opportunity to speak. And I know there was a lot of work to put all this together, so I'm glad there's 2 weeks also. I've got a chance to sort of go through it in part and catch a few things, but I agree that it's a good thing it's out there for 2 more weeks because there's a lot here to absorb. Have a high level comment that's in line with what I talked about earlier and at Planning Commission, mostly where I've been mostly speaking to all this, is that, in my opinion, projects that the city would need to do if there was no more growth are absolutely front and center and should be focused. But it's unsettled where things are headed, to say the least. If the community tries to do 2,000 affordable only housing with only market rate, that has a very low chance of success. If you do market rate without changing the comp plan, you open yourself up to all kinds of issues from the region, et cetera. So to me, the tip, I was happy to see until I think I understand something, and I'm staying on, point here. Last year's tip and earlier versions of this year showed future project needs in the neighborhood of $240 million for 6 or 7 corridor projects as a mix of transportation and stormwater costs. This current version does not show that, but yet all the projects are there. So the thing I'm asking is, what's the clear aim that the city can rally behind on land use and direct transportation projects to that? And if the community goes down the way of optimizing different and diverse housing more in centers, there's a plethora of evidence that would show that internal and local neighboring transit would probably provide more relief for the community as a whole than those units would generate. So in my view, the corridor projects that are not showing funding, I still think they're being worked on. I think those should be tabled for a while until we really know where we're headed, because if there was no more growth, they absolutely would not be needed. A couple other issues. In my opinion, I think there's a fair amount of money being spent on the Duthie Hill Road and potentially on 212 for raising the roadways. I don't know how often those are a problem, but there sure seem like there's a lot of categories like sidewalks and street lighting and school safety, et cetera, that should have some more funding. So I'm just wondering if a little redirection is in order. Appreciate the chance to sort of ad lib a comment here.
Thank you. And did we have anyone else that signed up?
We had one more pre-registered commenter, but it identified as iPad, so I'm going to try the person.
Okay.
Hi, did this work?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, sorry. My name's Allie Harris. I'm a resident of Sammamish. I'm the very south part of Sammamish, and I'm sorry, I just found out about this meeting today, so I didn't have time to prepare comments. I just wanted to raise awareness to the street of Southeast 48th. I know it's been brought up a couple times before in city council meetings, but the road has been here for about 20 years, and in that time, there's been hundreds and hundreds of more houses built on both sides of the road. The south side is Issaquah, the north side is Sammamish, so it kind of has gotten forgotten. I've been listening to the meeting tonight, and there was a lot of talk about the master plan, and there was a National Transportation Month proposal made. To me, it perfectly aligns with those initiatives putting sidewalks along that road. There have been certain developments approved along the road, and they put sidewalks in, but there's still huge chunks where there's no sidewalk. Hundreds of people, hundreds of homes go into this road to get to PCMS, Issaquah Highlands, Cedar Trails Elementary, and it's really, really unsafe. The shoulder is extremely narrow. It's uneven in places. There's more and more cars driving down the road. People are more and more distracted with things going on in their cars. I know you mentioned that, I think it was the tip, and there's money. I just don't want you to forget Southeast 48th. It would be great if our families could be able to walk to the Issaquah Highlands Park and Ride for public transportation, if they could walk to the Issaquah Highlands shopping area, if they could walk to go see friends rather than needing to get in a car or walking and dealing with the dangers of the cars along the road. There's been a big bus change at PCMS, and the bus times have changed, and there was a middle schooler who missed his bus and was afraid to bother his parents or maybe get in trouble, so he decided to just walk to school. And another mom fortunately found him along Issaquah Pine Lake Road where there was no sidewalk. She was able to pull over and safely get him to school. I've been concerned about it for years, and I've been trying to increase awareness. Someone's going to get hurt or worse, so please, when you're deciding where to allocate these funds, please, someone take time to walk down Southeast 48th with a stroller or with a dog or even on your own, and you see it really needs a contiguous sidewalk the entire way.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you letting me speak.
All right. Yeah. Are we all good there?
That is all of the commenters. Thank you.
For that one? Awesome. Great. Okay, so like Audrey said, this will be open for 2 weeks because I think that's our last meeting before the July 1st deadline. Is that correct? Unless there was an added meeting? Yeah, okay, awesome.
That's correct.
Great. Let's do your second, oh no, council. Oh gosh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, council. Questions, comments? Councilmember Gupta.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Audrey, for the presentation and for all the work that went into this. And thank you also for the answers to the Q&A that was sent by email. I did have a few questions. The first was clarifying on both the tip and the table providing background. I think it mentions that the Sahali Way Corridor project goes to Southeast 8th. To city limits, and from my understanding, it was Northeast 8th to city limits. So I just wanted to make sure that that was the case and was accurately reflected.
I can double check on that. Sorry.
And that's page 124 and 126 of the packet.
Yeah, my understanding is it is going to Northeast 8th to city limits. So I was just pulling up the packet in front of me, but thank you. We will double check and make that correction and add that to our comments.
Great, thank you. I appreciated the taking a step back on, I think it's TR2 and TR3 for the Issaquah Pine Lake Road corridor. I think doing a corridor study makes a lot more sense, especially based on the rationale that council chose to pursue the Sahali Way corridor study. I'm not sure that a $60 million project for Issaquah Pine Lake Road really makes sense for our community. So I was very pleased to see that as reflected in the draft tip. Let's see. I did have a couple of questions about the sidewalk gap and non-motorized program. The first one was so it shows the scoring rubric, and then it lists the projects in that program, which are under $350,000. 7 out of those 12 projects scored 0 out of the scoring process, which I thought, that struck me as odd. So I wanted to know why, I guess they qualify, but why they would score 0. That just stuck out to me.
We can double check on that. I think that might have been, we'll double check. There should be a score with every project in there, so we'll double check on that.
Okay, great, thank you. I saw also there are a couple of times in the packet, I think in the SWIP, there were notes that projects were moved out of a certain category because they exceeded the limit. So for Project 30 on the non-motorized program, the estimated cost is $468,000. So I wasn't sure why that was still reflected in that bucket when it seems like that is a pretty discrete cutoff.
Yeah, these are projects, we aim to keep the threshold for this program around 350,000. It's for a few reasons. One is we have to have a cutoff, otherwise it'll just be one long list. But it also allows us to, another factor we look at is the cost of the project, but also how we can easily, these are meant to be quick projects that we can design, bundle together for design and construct fairly quickly. So I think this may be a gap project that may be exceeding the value at the time it was placed in the program, and I'm guessing with inflation over time it exceeds that, but it's certainly, the other factor we look at is how quickly can staff prepare their work so it can go out for bid and then construct it. So we'll double check to follow up on that, but that is something that we look at when we add projects to this particular program.
Great, thank you. So I saw also some notes that the bike and ped, I forget what it's called, mobility plan, is slated to be completed in 2025, which is very exciting. But in our tip, the allocation in that non-motorized program with projects under 350,000, the allocation stays the same throughout the 6 years. And my expectation would be, after we complete that plan in 25, that we would project an increased allocation to start pursuing the projects that we identify in that plan.
Yes, you're correct. And I anticipate that some projects identified through that plan is meant to be citywide and overarching. So there may be resulting projects that will be placed into the sidewalk gap program. If there's smaller gaps that are already in there, there might be some added to that list. The bike and ped plan is also meant to look comprehensively across the board, our arterials, collectors, and local roads to see as we potentially apply complete streets and to some of our network. Where on our network do we need that? Do we need sidewalk on both sides? Could it be a shared use trail? That's some of the intent behind the corridor study as well, so that we are promoting multimodal connected, but then we're really taking a hard look at what is needed for each one of those cases. So the results of that plan will both identify what we have now, which is identified in the TMP, but ways to get there through multimodal level service, and the results of many projects scattered throughout the TIP in different programs.
Okay. This is going to be my first budget process, so I understand that the TIP is not a budget document, but I would expect, as we go into the 25-26 budget process, if there's some identification that we would potentially like to increase allocation to start implementing the result of that bike ped master plan, it might help us allocate funds. Having that intent reflected somewhere in this capital spending document. And then I kind of had the same feedback / question for the transit enhancement spending, where we pass the transit plan, we have near-term projects identified. The $100,000 per year does not seem to reflect all of those improvements. I did see the list in the document that was updated yesterday of what that funding is meant to achieve, but at least for me, I would expect a greater allocation again, thanks to that transit plan.
Yes, and this is just getting things going, right? The transit plan identified some near-term projects that the city can choose to allocate funding for. So some of the plan work for 25 is looking at our crosswalk study citywide that would provide more access for transit ridership, with the overall goal of increasing transit ridership as one of our modes of transportation. Some of our other work identified through subsequent studies may lead to an update of our public works standards. The transit plan also identified mobility hubs and the importance of upgrading some of our bus stops through a bus stop amenity program. So the transit enhancement program combines all of that work, so we can take a look in 2025 at what we need so that we can roll out our bus stop amenities. So that we may be looking at, like I said, some standards for those bus stops so that we have, we could consider kind of a brand, if you will, for Sammamish or for certain areas in Sammamish if we want our bus stops to look a little bit a little bit differently. Of course, we would be having conversations with Metro the entire time to make sure it aligns with their standards and operations as well. But that's some of the work that's planned in 2025 so that we can begin the next few years after that and start improving some of the connections to transit. So that program essentially may increase its funding in the future based on some more of the work that we're doing in 2025. And of course, if that's funding that would be allocated by council during the budget process.
Great, thank you so much. I do have some more questions, but I will follow up offline. All right. Thank you so much.
Deputy Mayor Howe.
Thank you. And the document is really nicely put together, really clear. I like the way it's laid out in that I can click on, see the web page and be able to kind of get a real sense of what it is you're talking about. I had a couple of questions. One of them reflects a bit of what a comment that we just heard this afternoon from Syed about funding. And I was just looking for when we might have a little more clarity on some of the funding partners and percentages. I was just looking as a case in point, TR 126, for example, that, it's a project, what the forecast looks like. We've got city funds that have been identified and partnerships, but it's not clear what the percentages are of, what percentage is coming from us, from a partnership, and partnership is vague, and I'd be looking for, over time, not today, who is that partner? So that, for transparency, just because it would be helpful. The other thing I was just going to ask had to do with the ADA remediation. Is there a timeline you must commit to? Like that you have to get that particular type of project done?
That's a great question. We will need to follow up with you on the timeline. I know that when we have improvement projects, different projects, and if we do have barriers within that project limit, we do upgrade those areas within that project limit. So for example, overlay through pavement management, if we're planning to overlay a road
right,
and the ADA ramps are not compliant, we upgrade those. That is a requirement before we can move forward with the overlay. But in terms of a timeline associated with our overall program, I'd have to take a look at the ADA transition plan and get back to you. It's a great question.
Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate that.
Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, hi, Audrey and Greg. Thank you for your time tonight with us. I'm fully aware that you guys are in a difficult position and that your department finds yourself right now, because according to your statement here in your presentation, you said that we're going to follow RCW 35.77. And in that, the legislative body, that's us, the city council, pursuant to by having one or more public hearings, shall prepare and adopt a comprehensive transportation program for the ensuing 6 calendar years. That's our TIP. We call it a TIP, but it's a transportation improvement plan. So if the city has adopted a comprehensive plan pursuant to chapters 35.63 and 35A.63 of the RCW, the inherent authority of the first-class city based on its charter, which we have here as a city, thank you, prior councils, we're supposed to establish a program that consists with this comprehensive plan. So the question is which comprehensive plan are we then being asked to adopt a TIP or a transportation improvement plan?
So the TIP is a 6-year planning document. Ideally, it reflects the adopted comprehensive plan and it can incorporate other plans such as the transit plan and different goals that we are striving to get towards as a community, if that makes sense. So a lot of the projects that are found in the TIP originate from our prior comprehensive plan. Of course, we are taking a look at what we know now for different traffic modeling as things have changed quite a bit since our last comprehensive plan, and we are in progress towards completing our first transportation master plan and comprehensive plan.
So the comprehensive plan that you're using is 2015?
The currently adopted comprehensive plan.
Thank you. So we'll be following that as our basis for adopting this changeable TIP. The program shall be filled with you're going to file this with the Secretary of Transportation 30 days after we adopt it, and that would be before January 1st if I listened and read that was the presentation. Is that correct?
We are required to transmit it to the Washington State Department of Transportation by July 1st each calendar year. So the city does have an opportunity to amend the TIP at any time, but we do need to transmit the adopted TIP to the state by July 1st.
So if July 1st, so that means June 1st, we were, okay, according to the law, I'm just reading the law, it was supposed to be 30 days, well, 30 days after we adopt it. So if it's due on the, here's my confusion. If it's due on the 1st, then we're late. Is my understanding there wrong? When I read the
Hey,
law,
Audrey.
it says that that more than 30 days after the adoption, so the council adopts it into policy, and then we submit it, and then there's 30 days, and then what? So here's my confusion. Is it that it's going to be adopted by or handled by the Secretary of Transportation by the 1st, or that we adopt it by the 1st, and then it's 30 days after that then the Secretary of Transportation will adopt it?
Okay,
will
Carrie's
approve it.
going to give us the language.
Just to clarify, I'm not sure exactly which RCW you're reading, but we are not a first-class charter city. The city of Sammamish is organized as an optional code city under the Council Manager Plan of Government in Title 35A.12 of the, or I'm sorry, point 13 of the RCW. So we're an optional code city under a Council Manager Plan, not a first-class city. We don't have a charter.
Okay, then I've been misinformed. I thought the city of Sammamish, we do have a charter.
Sorry, again, we do not. We're an optional code city organized under Title 35A, specifically Chapter 13.
So then explain to me, sorry, Carrie, I'm learning then, because I thought we were the other. So if that's the case, when is this due to the Department of Transportation?
July 1st.
July 1st. And then are we required, so now I've got a lot of questions. Sorry, I would thought this was going to go my direction, and it didn't obviously go that way. So I apologize, council. So I'm learning. The 6-year plan for the city, then, do we have to meet regional transportation requirements?
Councilmember Trine, if I may, our planning document, or this document, the transportation improvement plan, is a planning level document. We submit it to the state so that they know what we're planning on doing in the future, and that makes us eligible for statewide grants and other funding. We have to have an adopted TIP in order to be eligible for those. There aren't regional requirements from a perspective of you have to be planning for X or Y or Z from that perspective. PSRC doesn't give us direction, but they have funding that's available for us to compete for, assuming we have an adopted TIP. That's the buy-in, if you will, to be eligible for PSRC funding or state funding. So I'm not sure that that's what you were asking, but hopefully that's a little bit helpful for you.
Yeah, it's headed in the right direction, because the other one would be, because I looked at all the projects that are on the plan, and then I look at the law, and one of the things that I want to make sure that the city is not at risk for not following the law. So if the law is that we are supposed to be a regional, that some of our projects, which they are listed on there, by the way, that we have our regional partner, and then when I sit on regional boards and talk to people throughout the region, it's how do we tie into that system, in a sense, for our transportation, in this case, specifically transportation. And so I look at it and it's like, well, then Puget Sound Region Council says pretty clearly in Vision 2050 what their requirements are for regional projects and what is considered transit, what is considered, large road improvement projects that would help the region. So then I'm back to the law, RCW 3577, where it states that our 6-year plan for each city shall specifically set forth those projects and programs for regional significance for inclusion in our plan, which then leads me to saying, okay, we have 4, I believe, that are on our regional plan. And it would, so here's where I'm headed next then, at least logically, is how do you fund those? Or are we funding them? And right now, it looks like all of our regional is unfunded. So if you're going to present a tip to them that doesn't meet the requirements, then we would need to change the tip to meet the regional requirements for projects in the city of Sammamish.
Sure.
And fund them.
Sure. 2 pieces. Let Carrie start off and then I'll follow up.
So Councilmember Trina, I'm following the language that you're looking at in RCW 35.77.010 subsection 1, and where it says in the second full sentence under subsection 1, if the city or town has adopted a comprehensive plan pursuant to chapter, and the one that applies to us as a code city is 35A 63 RCW.
Correct.
Right, so that's what you would then refer to, and that lays out all the requirements that I believe the city is following for purposes of developing a transportation improvement plan. So it's 35A 63 that spells out all the requirements. Because we don't have a charter.
So in a sense, I guess what you're saying to me, and I'll have to do some more research, so thank you for the extra time, is that we are following the 35A 63.
Correct.
And therefore, we do not have to fund or show funding for regional projects.
No, I'm not saying we don't have to show funding, but we do follow 35A 63, and perhaps Audrey can speak more about the level of detail we have to get into for our tip regarding funding, but I just wanted to refer you to that chapter because that's what governs for code cities such as Sammamish.
Yeah, I'll need some additional time to research that and be back next week.
Sure. Thank you, Councilmember. And if I may, the regional projects that we show on here are regional in nature, that we've identified as regional, not that they are regional projects. And from sort of what you're referring to, they're regional because they are outside our boundaries or connect into our boundaries, as opposed to being intra-Sammamish, they're inter-Sammamish, if that makes sense.
Makes sense.
And that's why, and again, in our TIP, we are showing if we don't have a specific funding source identified, then they are unfunded at the moment. And if we have a specific source identified, then we have to call it out. So those projects at the moment are showing as unfunded, in part because they require a lot of regional work to do. But again, those are our designation, not an actual regional designation, if that's helpful.
Right, that is helpful. And then I would just say that kind of the push here from my perspective is that light rail is going to open up in Redmond, and why we don't have planned projects to access that regionally from Sammamish, to me is like, I don't understand why we're not, that we don't have a plan that reflects that. Or the question would be, should we have a plan that reflects that? And then my idea, okay, so if it's not for this year, fine, but then we should be looking at it next year as what kind of projects should we have been putting on our tip that would coincide with a transportation master plan that would say, hey, this is an important thing to the north, and then looking at what we are going to do for 2041 in the future. Because we can go farther than 6 years looking at the future. And that puts us at 2041 going to the south end. And how do we fix some of our transportation challenges at that end of the city as well? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councilmember. And just very briefly, in part, that is the Sahalia Way Corridor Study is looking all the way down to the 202 interchange as part of that corridor review.
Then I would just add that we'd also probably want to look at East Lake Sammamish Parkway, even though I know the cost is hard, but there might be some improvements that could happen there that would help also allow residents to get to Redmond in a easier fashion. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember. We'll add that to the list. Thank you.
King County Metro 269 is also being rerouted to downtown, so, but we'll get more, I'm sure. Councilmember Stewart?
Thank you. And I put in my email, tip season, I'm sure, is your favorite time of year. So thank you. And I will not ask all of my questions here. I'll follow up because I know you responded to my first round of questions, and I haven't had a chance to thoroughly review that or the attachment 2 yet, since that just came out yesterday. I've perused it, but I haven't gone through it in detail. At a high level, one question I have is that we don't show any grant funding on the tip, right? We just show the 2 funds. And I do feel like there should be a column for grant funding because we do already have some grant funding for some of these projects. And I know there's been some debate, and I think it's a policy decision, if I understand it correctly, from the council, whether or not we want to show potential grants, right, as we estimate, because we do use this as an estimating tool, and there's no guarantees of anything, but there's a reasonableness, right, because it says showing reasonable funding. There's a reasonableness to assume that we will get some amount of grant funding each year. And so I'm just curious if we should absolutely, I think, in my humble opinion, put the grants that we already know we have and include that on there. But maybe even having a potential grants or a potential funding sources for the things that we think might be somewhat reasonable or have a reasonable probability. So that would be one comment there. In general, I want to echo Councilmember Gupta's concerns around the amount of money that we have for our school safety programs, our sidewalk gap, and our transit and programs. I think those are woefully underestimated. And while I know this is a planning document and not a budget document, I do believe that this planning document helps to inform how much we need in our budget. And so I would rather us be very realistic about what these numbers really are going to be so that when we do our 2-year budget, we're making sure that we're allocating you money. Because I guess when I think about the sequence of events, if you're only asking for $15,000 in 2025 and $15,000 in 2026, we're probably not going to allocate more than $30,000 in the budget for those projects. So I think I would rather us err on that side. We can always decide at budget time to say, hey, that's a dollar too much, and we're going to roll that back and maybe elongate that project or push it out a year. But if you don't ask for it, you're almost certainly not going to get it, I think is probably a reasonable approach there. I do agree that while we still have some studies to do for our multimodal work, I do think there were some things identified in the transit study that for the near term, and I would like to see those on here, even if they're not funded. If we've already identified things we know we have to go and do, I think they should all be listed on here so that, again, we have a sense, at least I can say from my perspective, having it all in one list is really helpful for me to get a sense of the scope of it all. And that does lead me to the studies question. So I think if we're rolling studies into corridor studies, that's fine. But I think even individual studies should be listed on here if there's a reasonable assumption that that study could lead to a capital improvement project. Even if it's funded through consulting services, again, to have that placeholder on here that says we're going to do a study of, road X or intersection Y or whatever that is, and we're putting it on here because we think, that there's a good chance that it could say we got to go make some capital improvements within the 6-year time frame, or it could. So I'd like to see that, just because having it all in one place, I know you said it could be on the website and there'd be a list on the website. I'm not sure I can keep track of that many different lists, especially because you also said that there's a list in the TMP, but we don't currently have an approved TMP. So I think the answer to that question is there isn't currently a list of projects that you considered that didn't make this list anywhere for us to review. Is that accurate?
We do have a list, and I have answers to most of your questions too, so I'll start backwards and work my way back. But we do have a list, but keep in mind that with any of these planning documents, we start by the last adopted comprehensive plan. We add in other plans that have progressed since the last adopted comprehensive plan that may influence the list, such as a transit plan. In this case, for storm, we look at basin plans and different things like that, and then we are prioritizing those. We're working on that long-term 20-year list for the TMP that will be introduced with the TMP.
So will we have a draft of that list before we have to approve the TIP, or at least a really, really, really rough draft? So we just, again, have an idea of maybe what isn't yet on here. Because again, we're going to need to be doing a 2-year budget before we have that updated TMP, right? So it would be kind of good, at least from my perspective, to just see what else we have on that horizon. Because I do think there may at least be other studies or other planning work we want to potentially fund in the 25-26 timeframe.
Yeah, and what we have included in the TIP, if you look at the spreadsheet, it does have each category. We do have a handful of projects that are not currently funded. So what we have showed are the projects that have been made the top cut in terms of priority, if you will. And so a lot of the projects are funded, but quite a few are still left on the TIP. So it's a little bit of a hybrid between a constrained and unconstrained list. At the time, it does include a few that are currently unfunded. Should an opportunity such as a grant or partnership become available, council does have the opportunity to advance that project or consider advancing that sooner.
So at this moment in time, this is the entirety of the list. There are no other projects.
This is majority of the list. We do anticipate, with all of the corridor studies and plans that we are embarking on, as well as all the other plans that were in my presentation, that this list will become quite long in the next year, right? And but part of that work is to look at some opportunities to creatively look at projects so that we can identify the need for the project to make sure that we are doing the right project, right? And so part of that, some of our prior projects included projects that were $30 to $50 to $60 million. So we're hoping to look at improvements on a smaller scale so that we can advance projects sooner, projects that we think may qualify for some regional funding through PSRC or TIB to have those grant ready. And grant ready is about 30% design. So that's the goal in the interim.
For the sidewalk gap projects, the ones, I think there were 8 or so. I don't remember, sorry, exactly how many, but there were good ones. But there's a lot of sidewalk gaps that aren't identified on there. And at $200,000 a year for those projects, it would take us 16 years just to do those projects on the list, roughly. I didn't add them up, I just kind of eyeballed them. So again, I think we should, figure out how we can up that. And then there are other sidewalk gaps that aren't on there. So for example, the Southeast 8th between 212th and 214th isn't part of that, right? There's a Southeast 8th, I think it was 216th to 218th, but that first part coming down Southeast 8th where there's literally the shoulder is as wide as the white line, right, on both sides of the roadway. And that leads to the Big Rock Parks and Beaton Hill and those things. I also didn't see a sidewalk going up in front of Beaton Hill, and I don't know if that's included in something else, but I would think that that's a big one. We don't have the sidewalk gap project for Thompson Hill that we're about to create called out, right? I see that we have a project on here to close the gap on Inglewood Hill Road, but not the one we're going to create on Thompson Hill, which is also going to be a connector to the trail, right? Both of those roads are trail connectors. So I guess the broader question is, I think there's a lot of sidewalk gaps. How do we get a full comprehensive list of all those? And can we see how that scoring was done? Because what was interesting on the sidewalk gap scoring sheet itself, the environmental considerations are really taking points away, right? If it's going to pass through an area where maybe we don't want to encourage people to be, there was no positive scoring for, hey, this is a project that will help to, connect a multimodal, right? Like connect a bike path that will connect us to the light rail, right? And so on our overall scoring project list, we talk about that the environmental section actually can add, I think up to 20 points overall. But the sidewalk scoring seems like a whole different rubric. And it doesn't seem like it included that component, right? The vehicle miles traveled or encouraging people to not use their single occupancy vehicle like we have in the other part. And I think that might be a miss going forward as we look at the overall. And then are those projects only added to the list from requests that people sent in, those sidewalk gap projects, or is there some other way we're identifying those?
Historically, that's composed of or consists of requests from the community, and they're prioritized. I believe we do have some projects that fit into that price range from price cost, for the project from the prior TMP work that was done and all that wonderful engagement with the community. So some of those projects are added to that list as well. And then to answer a broader question about how do we get a list of all the gaps in the city, that'll be done through our TMP refinement project next year and our bike and ped master or mobility plan. So that's starts with the GIS exercise that will be shown in the TMP that does show some it's a gap analysis of our network, and we can talk through level of traffic stress as we put together our TMP. And what that will do is we look at pedestrian movement through the city and look at level of comfort, and should council choose to look at different levels of stress, a lower level of stress. And as we work on the TMP and in our bike and ped master or mobility plan next year, all of that work will be identified. And just a reminder for the sidewalk gap program, that's really meant for really small gaps that we can quickly roll those projects out. There'll be many, many other pedestrian connections that will be reflected in other portions of the TMP, such as our corridor projects and our connections projects. So there's connectivity is reflected throughout the TIP. It's just in different places.
So when we do that pedestrian study next year, will we be looking at all of the schools and a mile radius around each of the schools and identify projects there? Because I do feel like that's, especially where we have particularly high traffic backups around some of our schools, if we could improve the pedestrian and bike safety and access around that, we have at least a fighting chance of reducing some of that congestion. Is that part of that?
Yes, and some of that work, if we choose to look at complete streets in different lenses, some agencies are employing complete streets in their network by looking at connections to schools, to parks. Our sidewalk program scoring does that a little bit, but also based on adjacent land use and density. So that's something that we can take a look at in the future as well. We don't always have space for sidewalks on both sides and protected bike lanes, right? So we have to prioritize which roads and road segments will receive those amenities in the future. And
totally, and I'm totally open.
Those plans next year will help. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm totally open to you guys coming back and saying, hey, we can put sidewalks on just one side of this road here, because that's still infinitely better than no sidewalks. And then this is probably a question for you, Scott. Given that there's a lot of work that's going to happen in 2025 with the TMP and with some of these other studies that are probably going to have some pretty big price tags, how are we planning on reconciling this timing-wise? Because we're going to be approving a budget here before we have that data for the 2025-2026 timeframe. So will we put some placeholders in there, or will you come back as part of the mid-buy to try to fund those?
Well, councilmember, discussion and funding are two different components. I think we have a broader conversation to talk about how we fund our entire citywide CIP, for which the TIP is one portion of. So yes, there will be a lot more projects identified, and that will be part of that 20-year list that we'll be discussing as part of the TMP. That will happen in the fall, that TMP list. And then as we go out and do these studies this next year, some of the studies won't be done in time for the mid-buy budget. They'll be in process or they'll be nearing completion. But we have a broader conversation to have once we get the rest of those planning documents done and identified those projects. So there's a bigger conversation about our CIP and what does council want to fund and how much does council want to commit to that. That is coming, but we don't necessarily have to solve all that as part of the biennial budget at the moment. That's going to be an ongoing conversation.
Okay.
So I think what you're seeing right now is what we know today to the best of our ability, and then those projects, like Audrey was saying, you're seeing the highest scored projects that are on there. So that those are available for funding. Like if we get a grant, council might choose to move one of those up to match the grant. And again, I'll go back to the Lewis Thompson Hill Road project was a project that fell into that category. Right. So that's how we would roll it out. And again, the TIP is always an iterative process. As we know more, we add more to it. As projects come in, we'll add more to it. And we continue to learn as we go.
Great. And then Audrey, my last question, I promise, Council. In anticipation of the opening of the light rail in August of next year, I believe is the target date. I know that we do have some additional bus service coming on, but what else might we be trying to target? And I do think we should be looking to try to align that in a more accelerated way, right? I think it's a real missed opportunity if we don't have sort of other plans, whether, and I know that the transit plan talked a little bit about it, but I do think that to me is a huge priority, right? There's a huge opportunity to connect people, anybody who's commuting into Bellevue, for example. The light rail is a huge option. I think people will be eager to do that because they'll save not only time, but parking, right? It's expensive to park in Bellevue often. So I would like to see us at least have a placeholder there for something that we might try to get done faster and hopefully target something in 2025 or at least early 2026 and not wait until everything is done to think about what we can do to move people more efficiently than in their single occupancy vehicles down to the Mary Moore station. Thank you.
Yeah, agreed. And I just really quickly, the transit plan did a great job of highlighting some capital improvement examples, and the transit enhancement program on the TIP does just that. We need a little bit more time to have some discussions with King County Metro for near side, far side bus stop optimization. Those conversations will happen in parallel as we're progressing with the Sahali corridor study and design. So, and then keep in mind, just as a reminder for the corridor project, we are looking at different opportunities to phase in improvements over time. So one potential project phasing plan could be making transit improvements to the corridor first before maybe the entire corridor is improved or sections of the corridor. But we need to understand how the corridor will be built out to and how it's intended to function over the next 20 years first. So we're working towards that. But these things do take time, and we want to make sure we're doing it right and going through all the right steps so that we have a project that can be built at the end of the day as well.
Councilmember Lamb.
Thanks for the presentation. I promise I will make my questions quick. One of the things I appreciated with the Sahali corridor study when it came to council was that we were asked what our priorities were for the corridor, and the consultant provided options. Is SQA, like for the corridor studies that we'll be looking at, will they be done similarly? Because I really liked how Sahali was done.
Yes, very similarly. There has been prior work on all of those corridors to date. But we will be revisiting that prior work, making sure we can utilize any prior, work that was done at to the best of our abilities, survey and different things like that. But the most important piece is that we engage with the community and with council along the way.
That's
so very
great.
similar format.
Great. I thought it was a great way to lower the costs too of the work on the corridor, to kind of cherry pick the ones that we think could make the most impact. Kind of going back to sidewalks, it seems to be the hot topic of the evening. I'm going to echo a lot of what we've already heard tonight, that that there isn't enough money being spent on sidewalks. We're spending $200,000 a year. There's 12 projects, and which totals $3.4 million. And so again, it will take 17 years to get those projects done. I mean, I would like to double the amount that we spend on sidewalks and get them done in half the amount of time. I was kind of surprised to figure out how much the sidewalks cost on a per square foot, and $1,000 roughly, $700 to $1,000 per square foot. That is very expensive, and so I understand the challenge of kind of figuring out where to put our dollars, but for me, because we're trying to lower our emissions, to get people out of cars and get people walking and having safe sidewalks, I think it's pretty critical that we have those. And speaking of sidewalks, if ISD, as high school number 4 passes, there is a sidewalk gap on 228th, a very long sidewalk gap. And how will that be funded?
If that measure passes, there are mitigation measures through their right-of-way permit and their permitting process. I can't remember those off the top of my head, but part of that will be fulfilled through mitigation that they have to complete as part of their requirements for the project that were identified in the traffic impact analysis. I don't have that off the top of my head.
Okay. On one of your slides, it showed that the 340 fund, there was $3 million, and the traffic impact fees were 2.5, but general fund was TBD. When will that be determined?
That would be determined by council as we move forward through the budgeting process. So the TIP is a planning document, and if council chooses to move forward with all of these projects in the budget process, along with the citywide CIP, that allocation can be determined by council.
Okay, so when we're talking about reallocating dollars, let's say, to sidewalks, that will be part of that process, right?
Yes, part of it, or council can choose to prioritize funds for different programs in a different way as well. So there can be some movement in terms of allocation for different program funding at the TIP level, but really the allocation from general fund comes with budgeting decisions as we put together the budget for this upcoming biennium, as well as the citywide CIP.
Okay, great, thank you.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems like such a long time since I put my light on. I've nearly forgotten the question I was going to ask. But it was, of course, related to sidewalks as well, and I agree with everything that has been said, and I'm definitely not going to reiterate everything that was just said. I think we'd all probably start to cry if I did that. So I just wanted to bring to your attention, I'm sure you already heard the public comment we've received tonight about Southeast 48th, which I believe is over on the Issaquah Falls City Road. That's part of the city, so just to keep that in mind in terms of receiving feedback from the public about sidewalk issues. Another sidewalk that I keep continually noticing that's not there is on 212th between Ebright and the Southeast 8th intersection. I just noticed the other day, it was like 2, maybe 3 separate families carrying bicycles on their backs, looking like they were heading to Ebright, and they were just walking on the hard shoulder, and I felt very bad for them. So, and I'm sure that that's something that happens on an ongoing basis on that part of our city, so that might be another section that we take note of. But I was glad to hear that we're going to have like a comprehensive list of where these sidewalk gaps are, and we just don't have to go piecemeal and kind of, very kind of ad hoc about where we where we place those dollars. And that's really, thank you for your presentation. And I do look forward to seeing more sidewalks built in the city. I think it's really important. So thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Councilmember Treen, did you have a go back?
Just because I did a little research, is that, so thank you, Carrie Sands, for that, is that, so in our transportation element of our comprehensive plan, one of the things that we're required to do is have a circulatory element consistent with our general location, alignment, and extent of existing and proposed major thoroughfares, our major transportation routes, and terminals, facilities. Okay, we don't have those. All of which should be correlated with our land use element of our comprehensive plan. And so I just want to make sure that I'm just, again, reiterating, as I did on Monday, that still would like to see not only our current land use section of our comprehensive plan, which should help all of the council as far as what we should be doing, but also a draft of the land use section of the update that's going to come our way, so that we are prepared for 2025 when this tip comes to us again. So that's thank you.
Yeah, I don't know what to add after all of this conversation. 3 hours later, what I would love to ask about is, what does WashDOT do with these? If it's like, turn this in every year, oh great, this city did it, check a box. I mean, they must do more, you know, and it's like you're complying with like growth management, that kind of stuff. I'm just like confused. Where does this go? Yeah.
A really important element of this is this allows the city to be eligible for different funding opportunities through the state.
So back to like the very first thing that was said. Great. That's all I wanted to know. I was just wondering, I was like, great, Sammamish did it. Here's some money. Or no, now you're eligible for money. Good job.
We're eligible, yes.
Okay. That's how easy it is. I'm just kidding. Okay. Yeah, let's move to stormwater if council's good with that. So again, this hearing will be open until the 18th, most likely. So yeah, thank you both. And yeah, I hope we get some more comments. So let's now move to your presentation for the 2025-2030 Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan presentation.
Good evening, Council. I'm going to give Audrey a break and save her voice for a sec. Greg Stomatio, Deputy Director of Public Works. Before we dive into the Stormwater Improvement Plan presentation, I'd like to thank the Public Works staff who worked very diligently and hard on both of these plans, and I've gone into great depth, and all of the items within these plans I feel will lead to some really great programs and projects that will create great service for our community. So let's share. So the SWIP, similar to the TIP just presented, is a 6-year snapshot of our capital plan of what we plan with our stormwater utility. Tonight we'll be discussing that and our recommendations and next steps similarly. I won't dive too much into this, as Audrey presented it earlier tonight, and we also did a snapshot of what our capital programs are earlier this spring. Other than the SWIP is the capital plan for our stormwater utility. It goes into the planning phases and throughout the life cycle of a project. Again, similarly, Audrey presented this slide as well. Our stormwater plan takes into account our level of service defined by the City Council. It also takes into account our basin plans, our permitting requirements, and other strategies within our community. The annual update for the SWIP is what we're discussing tonight, which leads into our CIPs and which also leads into our 2-year budget. Our SWIP contains 2 components, the SWIP spreadsheet itself, and then also the guide, similarly to the TIP. The SWIP guide has revenue assumptions and project descriptions, and also shows our methodologies and our connections within our goals to the city as well. And the SWIP website, the draft SWIP has already been placed onto our current SWIP website. Some of the components of our programs within the SWIP are our 100 series, the small drainage resolution programs, our 200 series, which does pipe evaluations and rehabilitation of our storm lines, the 300 series, which is stormwater facility retrofits, vaults, and other facilities, and our 400 series, which does restoration of our ponds. We also have other programs, which I'll be discussing on the next slide. So everything in blue is the prior programs that I just discussed on the other slide, and the various funding over our 6-year CIP. I won't itemize those. Those are there and available. The yellow items are projects that are medium in size or even small in size and fit into our small works roster. Our green projects shown here are our larger storm projects, anything over $300,000, and the various funding dates for those as well. And then at the bottom, our orange components are transportation projects that fall into the TIP, but show the funding levels for the storm components of those transportation projects. All of these are in 2024 dollars with escalation throughout at approximately 4% per year. Or not at 4% per year, not approximately. The next steps within this are we're going to have a recommendation for opening the public hearing for our SWIP tonight. We'll also have a 2-week period that we'll be making the recommendation to close and adopt the SWIP on June 18th. How does the public provide comments? Similarly, as I just mentioned, it's open for 2 weeks. Written comments similar to the TIP are made to the city clerk with the website or the email address there, and typically people CC the city council as well. Similar to the TIP, we'll have an entirely consolidated spreadsheet that has all of our questions and the city staff comments that will be provided onto our SWIP website, which is shown there below. And it's our team's recommendation that we open the public hearing this evening and continue that until June 18th. Thank you. Audrey and I are available for any questions.
Great. Thank you so much, Greg. Okay, so I'm going to open up the public hearing for the 2025 to 2030 Stormwater Capital Improvement Plan, or the SWIP. We're going to do public comment first, and then I will open it back up to council. Mary Wichter.
Good evening, this is Mary Wichter. Sorry, it went red again. I live in Tamarack, and I wanted to talk about, there's a project called Tamarack Drainage Improvements. I started speaking in 2015 after really learning about problems in 2013 and 2014. And I wanted to let you know that that project has not been done. There are no 12-inch pipes anywhere. And it just hasn't moved forward, but we've had problems for a long time. So in my email, I actually sent you some of the records from this city. This is a map in 2010. They did an A, B, C potential. These were done by the city based on problems that had been identified that the city knew. There was so much growth happening in Tamarack. The stormwater senior program manager was spending about half their time. Then it was further revised with council input and council funding to say, hey, this area that flows west, which is the area that I live in, does need to have something done. This was done in 2011, 12, and 13. In the stormwater capital improvement from 2013 to 2018, the Inglewood Neighborhood Drainage Project, which turned into a trunk line that was a retrofit, and the Tamarack Neighborhood Drainage Project, which could have a water quality retrofit optionally in it. Those were put in, and so between 2012 to 2016, the Inglewood project was done, and we were going to be next on the list. And then there was a lot of feedback, and so this is from 2011. They said Inglewood is an old plat, Tamarack is an old plat, and there's old plats. They have no central drainage. They're receiving a lot of development pressure, meaning project or houses, small projects, which are large single-family homes, are growing. So there's development pressure, and they also have erosion and landslide hazards in other critical areas. So Inglewood and Tamarack, in a series of 5 Emergency surface water ordinances. You guys haven't done an emergency ordinance. They did 5 of them between 2013 to 2016 because they said we're using old code. There's all this stuff going on. We've really hurt the areas of Inglewood and Tamarack. We need to do something. So Inglewood did get their trunk line, which really solved a lot of problems. Tamarack has not had theirs. So this is actually a map that I created from the plat in 2015. We went around and we said, hey, there's all this water, it's coming forward, what do we do with it? And I learned that all these yellow areas, there's 40 of them. Those are houses that were built by the city. The red are the other 40 that are still vacant. So the problem that we have is there is a project called it. It was deleted 2 years ago in 10 of 2022. We didn't fight for it last year because we were fighting to get the Lewis Thompson one done first. That's scheduled, and I'd like to have it added back under the green area for stormwater, 6NN for Tamarack drainage improvements. Doesn't hurt you, gives us a chance if there's a project that maybe we could get grant money to get something done.
Thank you. All right, did we have anyone sign up for online?
Those who had pre-registered, please raise your hand if you wish to testify. Mr. Stickney, thank you.
Hello, staff and council. It's Paul Stickney. I'll turn on the video this time. I've got 3 things to mention. I was pleased to see the level of spending in the storm facility retrofit plan, because from a anecdotal perspective, I would say 80 to 90% of development in Sammamish was done at stormwater standards far lesser than what the city adopted from 2016 until now. So I was happy to see that. What I didn't see anywhere, and I'm not saying it should have been in here, but I was thinking it could have been. Over the years, there's been a lot of discussion about stormwater, regional stormwater in town center, and there was a push by Sammamish stormwater stewards and others to have more attractive aesthetic stormwater facilities. But I know during development regs phase 2, I heard some of those meetings, there was a lot of pushback is the cost is really high on smaller projects. But I was hopeful that in town center, with the amount of approximately 100 acres that won't be, developed and 140 that will, or something like that, there could be opportunities for some very attractive regional stormwater and a plan that would be a aesthetic benefit as well as stormwater quality and proper, retention. And the last thing I wanted to mention is I've never been really clear, so maybe I just missed this. But for example, on the George Davis Fish Passage and storm improvements, there's roughly $8 million to be spent, and I think some money's already been spent. I was just curious about what percentage of that is stormwater passage stormwater retrofit, managing less sediment, better water quality, et cetera, and what percentage is aimed at fish. And I don't have a preordained hope to that answer. I'm just curious what that answer is. I did notice in the packet that was presented that this project would open up a mile worth of reach up the George Davis Creek, which would get it about to the top of the hill. So that's good to add that for, prior spawning grounds. Anyway, those are my comments, and I'll study the rest of the packet more. Again, there's a lot to absorb, so might have some more to chat about at the next hearing and or send in. All right, thanks for the opportunity.
Great, thank you. Was there anyone else that got signed up?
That's all for public comment. Thank you.
Great, thank you so much. All right, council. Deputy Mayor Howe?
Again, thank you for the presentation. I have a quick question about, I think it's a typo, but I just wanted to see what the real number is. It's on page, it could be 175 or page 8, depending on how you look at it. And it was about project cost range. Is it $2 million? Sorry, Stormwater 300, if that helps. Storm Facility Retrofit Program.
Now, the annual range is 1.1 million to 1.3 million, which matches up with the spreadsheet as far as I can tell. I don't see total. That's the total cost?
It was the project range cost. It was, I think it's supposed to be 2 million, but I'm not sure.
Oh, I see what the typo you're talking about. Yeah, the forecast above is correct, but the one below, there is, we'll correct that.
Okay, I just wasn't clear on that. And
I can add to that just a little bit.
Great.
Too.
Okay.
This very important program began with the retrofit strategy that was adopted in 2021. There are a list of 20 retrofit projects that came about or recommended from this strategy. I believe we've incorporated 2 retrofit projects from the ZEC Basin Plan as well. So those individual project cost range can vary quite a bit. There's some smaller projects that are less than $1 million and quite a few that are over $1 million. And so we can get through this program list with all these very important projects most efficiently as possible. We are bundling some projects as they go through design so we can have a little bit more efficient use of resources there. So the project cost should vary a little bit, but the annual funding allocation for the program is around $1 million plus inflation.
Okay.
Or escalation.
Thank you. I was just trying to get some clarity there. The other question I had has to do with the picture that Newcastle has of their pipes. So do we have any cameras?
We do not have any cameras. We will be contracting out that service as part of our pipe condition assessment program. That's the first phase of this program. And I'm sure we will find pipes that look like that as well. We do have prioritized approach into how we repair those. Typically, they use water sewer standards for assigning the pipe a score, and then they overlay that score with a criticality score so that we can know how to prioritize all those different efforts. And to the maximum extent possible, we can go in and repair pipes using trenchless methodologies that are a lot less expensive and invasive.
So are the cameras just temporary? It's like a scope and then come back out, or actually any are permanent? I'm just curious if there's any advantage to having something that would actually monitor things for you.
Oh, I see. That's a great question. They are just either push or pull cameras. So I guess similar to if you've seen one for water, sewer, or had any plumbing work done, there's really tiny cameras. They can range in size that can be used to camera the pipes, and they can pan different ways as well. And then that technology goes back and is connected to the video truck that you'll see sometimes parked outside the road as agencies are working on their cameras.
And is there such a thing as an aging map that would actually show me the actual layout of where all of these pipes are and their approximate age or condition? Like one
question.
map.
I think the closest thing, we do have all of our storm pipes mapped. That is a requirement of our stormwater permit.
Right.
So I believe ArcGIS called Storm Bandit. It's online. I think there's a filter by age, but that's certainly a condition that we look at when we start these programs. It's usually age is one of the top criteria that we look at and where to start. Another criteria is our corrugated metal pipes tend to erode and decay a little bit faster, especially if they sit in acidic soil. So we look at pipe type, known failures, and then of course, with pavement management or other capital work, we would like to know the condition of our pipes before we go out there and work on our roadways as well. So that'll be an important piece that we look at as we start cameras our pipes citywide. So we're just starting this year. So that contract actually will be going through in the next few weeks, hopefully. So we're excited.
Okay, thank you very much.
Councilmember O'Farrell.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to advocate for the public comment that we just received from Mary Richter about adding the Tamarack drainage improvement back onto our list under 600. I'm not sure how council feels about that, but I feel like if we put that in as a placeholder, and as Mary was saying, if we were receiving any funding, grant funding for it, we have it on our list as opposed to not having it there whatsoever. So I would just like to say that that's something I would like to see back added back rather to the list. If council, I'm not sure how you guys feel, but I wanted to bring that up.
And this is private, correct? This is something that is private or is not private?
Drainage improvements in Tamarack would consist of managing privately maintained stormwater, privately owned and maintained infrastructure off of privately maintained roads.
Because I think the only conversation we had last time is the cascading effect of what this would do with other areas, but I do understand.
Yeah. It just feels like it's an issue we've had lots of conversation about, and I feel like we've never had like a full conversation, a full kind of conversation about where we've come to a conclusion as a council about, and if there's a path forward for it. Because I know we have other communities in the city who are experiencing a lot of rainwater retention on kind of common areas that are spilling down onto the East Lake Sammamish Parkway, and a lot of that is considered their responsibility to take care of because it's happening in their Greenbelt area. So I just think it warrants a conversation as a council about what are we going to do with issues like this that are happening going forward. When they are happening, they may not be originating in city land, but they are affecting city infrastructure. And what is our path forward to handling those situations? And that if there is some kind of a public, as received comment tonight, that some of the houses that have been built in that area were built by the city. So is there a city responsibility there? How do we move forward with that? I just feel like we hear about it quite a bit, and I just would like to kind of come to some kind of a conclusion about where we stand on this. So I just feel if we wanted to like add it back on.
I think if I may just add a little context, I know that this has been looked at before, and as always, it remains a challenge. This is not, as you point out, the only area around town that has private stormwater, and those private stormwater facilities are required to be maintained by the private, whether it's an HOA or otherwise. The Tamarack neighborhood is no different, except that there is no HOA and there's no shared facilities anywhere in that neighborhood. And that adds to the complexity, aside from the fact of which is the city doing work on private property for private benefit is a challenging one for us on top of that. So those are all as you know, anytime you start thinking about something like this, it has to apply citywide. And as you know, the council adopted the highest level of service that we offered when we went through this last time around. And part of that is the rate that is paid and then where the money goes. And that's all of that is already, as you saw, is in the TIP, is allocated for the projects that have been identified through the scoring process and the basin plans. So as with anything, there's always a resource conversation to be had anytime we start talking about adding adding projects or anything else, and then we add the complexity of non-public lands and access and everything else. And it is a tougher conversation. If I may, this is one we're happy to have with council members offline. I don't know that there's a decision point that we are prepared to even talk about at the moment. So I think that's an offline conversation. But again, the city's done a fair amount of work on this in the past, and unfortunately we always come up against the same roadblocks that are pretty good-sized roadblocks.
Yeah, and I think to have the conversation offline, and I'll be happy to do that, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to say, because you said city-built housing?
Not city-built, city permitted.
Okay, I was like, wait, how many times have we heard the city doesn't build houses? And I just wanted to make sure. But no, that makes a lot of sense. I think I would like to learn more too, because I'm like, I don't even know what that costs. I have no idea. And what have we done that has, hurt other places? So I think that would be super helpful. Does anyone else have anything for the SWIP? Okay, you have beat us to tiredness, I think. But this is super helpful. And is this one open for the 2 weeks as well? I didn't see okay, awesome. I just wanted to double check.
yes.
So we have, again, until the 18th, 2 weeks for opportunity there, and probably we can do in-person public comment again on this public hearing before we close it on the 18th. That'd be great. Awesome. Well, thank you, Audrey and Gray, for sticking with us. We really appreciate your time.
Thank you. We very much appreciate the feedback, and we look forward to receiving more feedback over the next 2 weeks. Thank you.
Great, thank you. You need a break? Let's do, back at 8:45, we'll take a break. Are you guys ready to wait longer? Yeah, okay. Sorry, I was waiting for the thumbs up. Okay, awesome. Okay, thank you for sticking with us. Anjali, the contract award for the Arts Strategic Plan.
Yes. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of Parks, Recreation and Facilities. We have for your consideration tonight a consultant contract with Framework to put together the city's first Arts Strategic Plan. With me tonight is Emily Scott, our Recreation and Cultural Services Manager, and she is the staff liaison to the Arts Commission. We also have Anne Humes. She is the Vice Chair of the Arts Commission and has really helped staff and work closely with us on the content for the request for proposals, the consultant selection process, and we look forward to her continued involvement on this project. So she is part of a subcommittee of the Arts Commission that is working with us on the Arts Strategic Plan. From the consultant side, we have Leslie Bain, principal, and she will serve as the project manager for the project. And we have Sarah Lukens, and she is the project organizer. And I do assure you that I gave them the option to be online, and they chose to be in the room. They wanted to come in person. We have a short presentation for you. I'll kick it off, and I'll turn it over to Sarah to walk you through the project scope. Next slide, please. So we will just go over very briefly the purpose for the Arts Strategic Plan, how we went about the consultant selection, and then I will turn it over to Sarah to walk through the scope and timeline, and then we'll take any questions, and we have a suggested motion at the end of the presentation. Next slide, please. So as you know, the Arts Commission was formed back in 2003 and have done some really great work since then. However, we haven't had a formalized guiding document. And the goals of the strategic plan are to develop the Commission objectives, policies, procedures, financial strategies, and to put together a guiding document and a public art plan. Next slide. The city put out a request for proposals and received a total of 8 responses, and staff was able to pick the top 4, and then we reviewed them with a broader group, including Anne Humes on the Arts Commission. We selected 2 firms to interview, and Framework was selected as the consultant. They are the prime consultant. They do have a couple of sub-consultants, Carolyn Law, who's the artist, and Annie Seeger, who is the economist on the project. Collectively, the team has extensive experience on similar plans for other cities, including the City of Renton, City of SeaTac, City of Tukwila, and Redmond. Next slide. I believe this is the scope, and I will turn it over to Sarah Lukens.
Hello, Arts Commission. Oh my gosh. Hello, City Council. You guys are at the Arts Commission. So I'm going to just run through our scope for the Arts Strategic Plan and let you know what we're thinking in terms of how we're going to accomplish this plan. So next slide. So the first thing that I'll talk about is our task one, which is project management. And there are sort of 4 key groups that we're going to be talking to throughout this planning process. But the one I want to really highlight is the Arts Commission itself. We're planning on meeting with them at their monthly meetings throughout the planning process. And this is really intended to ensure that this is a document that reflects their intentions, how they operate as an organization, and to create a really tight feedback loop so that we can ensure that we have buy-in from them, as well as that there's a plan that really works for them. We'll also be periodically meeting with all of you during your city council meetings to keep you updated on what we're working on, and we will be meeting with city staff, of course, to stay organized, and as well as with our city manager in order to make sure, again, that we are coordinating our efforts with many of the other planning efforts that are going on at the city simultaneously. And as you all know, Framework is also the consultant on the comprehensive plan, and so we will be working to ensure that this planning effort is in fact augmenting some of the work that we're doing on the comprehensive plan as well. Leslie, do you?
I just wanted to say that one of the things that we really love about arts planning, which is great, is to try and coordinate the goals of the city into a lens of arts and culture, of what people love, of your values, of how to express those values, of how to make you be more creative, and what brings you together. So we love the overlap of those planning, different lenses that come to a community.
So our next task is task 2, visioning and engagement. And I think what I want to highlight here is that City of Sammamish has been going through a lot of different planning processes. And so we want to make sure that we take a pretty tailored approach to how we do community engagement for this plan, so that it's not really redundant to some of the efforts that you've been making for the comprehensive plan and the PROS plan and some of these other efforts that you've been making. And then another thing that we really like to do on arts and culture plans is to think about the engagement actually as an opportunity for capacity building, because this is an opportunity for us to actually convene leaders within the community and help them to network and help them to create more of a community that will be the basis for the implementation going forward. So some key events are the open house, where we will be discussing a community identity. And actually during our interview process, one of the things that came up was this idea of art and technology as being sort of a niche for Sammamish. And so we're going to be considering different ways that Sammamish might fit into this broader East Side ecosystem of what really you can offer as far as arts and culture, to become more potentially of a receiver of people from the area, and as well as to support your existing community. And so, as I said, interviews and focus groups will also be a really important convening opportunity for people who are already key artists and cultural producers within Sammamish. Oh, and one thing I'll also say about that, as Leslie kind of mentioned, I think one of the things that we really enjoy about arts and culture planning is that we think that the community engagement process should in fact include arts and culture. So we like to involve artists and, again, cultural producers within our engagement activities to make sure that they're fun and engaging, and that we're sort of living the dream, if you will. Okay. So simultaneous to the outreach process, we're also going to be doing background research and an existing conditions assessment. And that will involve Annie Seeger, who is our economist, as well as we'll be looking at existing programming on the East Side. We'll also be looking at comparison cities to see how they structure their arts commissions and structure their arts programming. And so that we'll have some good case studies for the Arts Commission to use to evaluate how they want to organize themselves. Do you have any? Okay, great. So we're good for the next one. And then we get to the fun work of the plan formulation. And so this will also come to all of you for feedback. But we will just continuously be working with the Arts Commission to ensure that we're giving them a document that is really actionable for them. And then finally, we'll have an open house, a second open house that will be this Live the Dream open house that is really going to be about kind of launching the plan and demonstrating this identity that we have come to through the visioning process.
I just wanted to say a little bit about our team, that we've got, I think, a really, really fantastic team. We want to make sure that your Arts Commission has the tools that they need. Much as art is fun and we want to live the dream, there are also technical aspects of it that I think are really important. And Carolyn Law, our artist, who is a working artist, arts planner, and someone that I worked with, we worked together on the Tukwila Arts Plan. Tukwila wanted a plan when they enacted a 1% for arts and wanted to know how to use that money well. And she's very good at many of the technical aspects. She's been on all kinds of arts commissions herself, as have we. But just to make sure that there are technical answers that the Arts Commission can have to make sure that your selection processes, your maintenance plans, your deacquisition, all those very kind of technical things that are not as much of the fun side of art sometimes, but they're really important and necessary as a city program. So we want to make sure that that happens. Annie Seeger is a secret weapon of ours in arts planning. She really understands municipal finances and what cities are around the state spending on arts, staffing, what those kind of peer cities are doing, just so you have kind of a clue as to what you're doing in relationship to your peer cities, and how we can use that well, and some funding sources that might be available. King County just passed, you may have heard something called Doors Open, which is going to have an enormous amount of money available for the arts. And we'll be looking at ways that we can set your nonprofits up for success and do that capacity building so they'll be eligible to bring funding into the community. Timeline, want to do the timeline?
All right. Yeah. You want to?
An anticipated timeline is that we will get going now if we have your authorization and work on this project. And the goal is to have it all wrapped up by spring of next year. With that, we'll take any questions. I believe the next slide is a suggested motion. Oh, and this is a further breakdown on the timeline. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor Howe? Are we ready?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Anjali's always ready.
Okay. Thank you. Great presentation. So happy that we're going to have a strategic plan for the art. Makes perfect sense. And one thing that had come up before was I know that you're going to be doing an assessment of existing art. And something I just wanted to call out is that we've had different members of tribes mention to us that this art is reflective of perhaps Alaskan art, not local tribe. So I see opportunity for us to investigate the art that we have, which, while beautiful and locally produced, may not be the most appropriate. So I'm interested in the partnerships that you will be forming with, in particular, our tribal neighbors, so that we are spot on with what we're doing there. So that's one thing. The other thing is an alignment potentially with the Chamber of Commerce, because the fact that you are bringing in an economist to help us understand where there might be grant opportunities, yay, and I'm looking for how I can monetize this still as studio tours. How many artists do we have in Sammamish? Is there an opportunity to create an event around the art that we are in the process of curating and positioning, but also with the arts community that is nascent here? We are not mighty enough to be doing a creative district here, but perhaps you can inform us as to when we could or if we should. So that's an open question in my mind. But I want to leverage the opportunity that we have. I see pieces starting to come together. I see the parks coming together. I see the Emerald Necklace thing coming together. I want to see if the arts community to come together, and I want to see if there's something that can just smash into the Chamber of Commerce so that there's commerce that's also in part of that as well. Because we're looking for arts space, for example, to show art. I want to use the empty buildings where where commercial space is empty and vacant, cut deals so that we are able to use this as art installation sites until such time as they actually have a tenant. And then I want to charge them a fine if they don't do it. It's an empty space tax. So that is that's me in a nutshell.
Thank you, Sheriff Howe. Councilmember Lamb.
Thank you for the presentation. I wanted to say it's so nice to see an all-women consultant team. It's great to see. I just had one question. First, I really like all the pieces of the plan. Like you covered so much, from the creation of signage guidelines, detailed grant funding strategies, clear roles and expectations for commissioners, and I mean, that's all great. The one thing that I thought was missing, and maybe you could help clarify, is I didn't see direction for curation of public art. And I see that as a potential problem. Like, you could do a matrix, let's say, right? And that's very cut and dry, but I didn't see kind of an overall vision for the type of art that we should be purchasing. Like, what are the guiding principles of the public art that would be appropriate for Sammamish? And so I don't know how that would fit into the strategic plan. So it's really a curation question, because I could see, we're trying to decide on a particular piece of public art. It comes to council. Everybody has a different opinion. It goes to, the Arts Commission. There's different opinions. If there was like a North Star as to what the art should represent, I think it would make it easier, and it would kind of quell some of the subjectivity out of that.
Yeah, I think there are lots of ways to address that, and it would be part of the whole strategy that would guide the Arts Commission. One of our artist friends, Perry Howard, says that public art should be like a library. There should be things for everybody, and I think that's important. So I think that criteria for what you're trying to achieve with the art that are fairly broad. It's not like we want everything to be blue, or we want everything to be a bird or something, but I think that gives you a lot of flexibility in what is going to represent the community, represent its values, represent its ambitions, where it goes. There's only so many resources, and I think it's really important to look at the kinds of criteria for type of art. Do you want local artists? Do you want outside artists? So we'll have those discussions with the Arts Commission about what kinds of things that they want to accomplish with the art, how those resources are best spent to represent the community, and really, I think, make its identity stronger, and things that I think will stand the test of time, the kinds of art. And I think there is public art. There's also events, community events. So, we look at arts and culture broadly. You've got really a set of rich cultures here that we hope can be represented in multiple ways, and find ways of sharing the cultures that everybody brings who's been here a long time in a short time.
Okay. I guess I was really focusing on public art versus the events.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I think we need to think of it all holistically. And the public art does need curation. Mm-hmm. And it looks to me like you've actually done a lot of good curation, but I think it's been sort of without a set of criteria. It's been just a set of judgment calls on an individual mm-hmm. basis. And sometimes that can be problematic. We've run into communities where people want to donate art, and it's like, mm-hmm. You need to say yes to some things. You need the ability to say no to some things. So I think we prioritize, locations, kinds of art, and all the kinds of criteria that the Arts Commission wants to cover.
Are there other cities that have created something that we could kind of model against with respect to curation?
Yes. I think Carolyn's work in Redmond is a good one, and it's right near you. They had an interesting piece in there where they had a set of criteria for the city in terms of which projects. They also had a percent for art, and there was a question that the city struggled with what art that should go towards.
Mm-hmm.
So some cities say, like, if you do your stormwater project, the art money goes to that stormwater project. Other cities says we're gonna bundle it up and then give it to the things that we have the highest priority for. And so there was some criteria in that one that I think were good. Our Tukwila plan looked a lot at different parts of town where the locating these different. Tukwila has some very different places like this, South Center. And their new sort of city center, they're trying to do the river. So I think similar to you guys, do you want to have things in the parks? Do you want to have them in the lakes? Do you want to have them in the trails? You've got a lot of art here. So where would we put it? Are there gateways? So I think there's a lot of different things to think about. And I think that all kind of does come under curation. And those would be public art pieces. Where do they go? What kind of art should they represent? How do we get a diversity of things in the arts so that we have our art library? Does that help answer your question?
Yeah, I look forward to seeing the plan.
Great,
Yeah,
thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments? Yeah, so I will entertain a motion to authorize Scott to enter into that contract. Oh, did you have something? Okay. To enter into the contract with Framework.
Second.
Oh, sorry, that was an actual motion. I will entertain one, though. Yeah. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I move to authorize the city manager to enter a contract with Framework Cultural Placemaking to complete the arts strategic plan. Yeah, you got it. Yeah, awesome. All right, any other questions or comments before we vote? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. Thanks for coming as well.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council.
Yeah, of course. Okay. Is Mark somewhere?
He's somewhere in the ether. Yeah, he's online, and
Awesome.
Mung is with us in the room.
Great. Okay, so next we have our adopting a new employee handbook and repealing the existing.
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm going to go ahead and start off. Mark Barrett, Administrative Services Director. We're here this evening to present the updated employee handbook and recommend passage of the resolution that would repeal the existing employee handbook and adopt this new updated handbook. Updating the employee handbook was on council's 2023 work plan. It was intentionally held over into 2024 to incorporate any necessary adjustments associated with a new collective bargaining agreement. The new CBA was adopted by council in February of 2024. We incorporated the necessary changes, and now we have a finished product. Human Resources did the document rewrite, which included some reorganization for ease of use. The HR and legal professionals at Archbright reviewed and made edits. The city's leadership team reviewed it and made edits. City legal reviewed it and made edits. And union leadership were given a presentation on the updated handbook and had an opportunity to review and comment on it as well. I'm here this evening with our HR manager, Mung Franklin, which should ensure that all goes well as it relates to projecting the presentation as we see. Mung did the actual work on the handbook and will provide a short presentation on the major changes to this version of the employee handbook. Mung?
Thank you, Mark, and good evening, Council. All right, so as Mark mentioned that we made lots of changes in this new revision. In addition to reorganizing the sections, chapters for better grouping and continuity, we also added lots of new contents and sections as well. So here are some examples. We started the new employee handbook with a welcome message from City Council and City Manager. This is to set a positive tone as well as outlining the common values for alignment and understanding. We also introduced gender-neutral pronouns throughout the entire document to support the city's diversity and inclusion initiative. We revised multiple policies to align with the current practice. We outlined the general expectations on remote work for continuing to offer this program and administer the program successfully. We provided guidelines on social media as well as networking to help employees to navigate around usage in the digital world. And then we also added an open door policy as well as bolstered the anti-harassment policies as recommendations from the 2022 HR assessment. Also, many laws have changed in the past 6 years. Washington sick leave law, and also the implementation of the Washington PFML that became available to workers and families in 2020. I'm also just going to call out some key updates, legal updates here, instead of reading everything. So we made sure pregnancy and whistleblower status are listed as protected categories. And also in the Public Record Act exemption, we made sure to reflect the exemption is to protect employee information. And then also we proactively updated, broadened the definition of family member per legislation that's going to go in effective in 2025. For fairness, consistency, as well as ease of administration, we updated certain sections in the employee handbook matching the CBA language. Here are some examples. For the length of probation period went from 6 months to 12 months, matching CBA. And then we updated the holiday table, recognizing the 4 city-recognized paid holidays, and also the vacation accrual table, recognizing the 2 new tiers to recognize years of service at the city. Terms on call-out, call-back, as well as standby pay are also matched as well. And also the project-based out-of-class assignment opportunities are also called out in this new handbook. Last but not the least, here are a few more items I wish to inform Council tonight. We included hyperlinks throughout the entire handbook for easy access. Added graphic design features and work to enhance the city's image, and making the employee handbook more inviting versus just a menu, and also made it easier for employees to navigate throughout the document. To promote transparency in policies and expectations, HR will be hosting education sessions, and we believe this will help to foster trust and a positive workplace, a work environment where our employees feel empowered and informed. We plan on disseminate the new handbook digitally and collect the acknowledgement of receipt electronically in our HR system. Also, during onboarding, we will highlight main policies to new hires and also offer opportunities to review as needed. And lastly, HR will be timely updating the employee handbook going forward in support of the city's operations, ensuring compliance, as well as mitigating risks. I hope this gives you an idea of what we did, and thank you for your time.
Great, thank you. Mark, did you have anything to add before we go to council?
No, just that staff would recommend passing the resolution that would repeal the existing handbook and putting this new handbook into effect.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I'll open up to council. Deputy Mayor Howe.
I just have one quick question. It has to do with the harassment policy. You updated it. Is it because there was a law change, or was there a specific reason?
Let's see.
Just looking for context.
Yes. Yes, Carrie, thank you.
I'm happy to jump in. Deputy Mayor Howe, thank you for that question. I think we just did a more general update trying to, again, ensure gender neutral pronouns. We like to refer to it as the anti-harassment policy, of course. It's
I'm so good at the other. It's going to be some training for me.
It was more of a general update, not necessarily driven by changes in the law.
Okay, thanks.
Are there any other questions or comments from anyone? Councilmember Stewart?
I move that we repeal the existing handbook and pass the new handbook as the City of Sammamish's new employee policy handbook.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Any other questions or comments?
I just want to say thank you for doing this and doing all the work. I want to particularly thank you for all the sort of incorporating of the DEI work as well, and having an anti-harassment policy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. All those in favor of Resolution 2024-1056, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Great. Thank you. Thank you, Mung. Thank you, Mark. We'll see you all later.
Thank you.
Scott, City Manager Report.
Thank you, Mayor. This one is going to be brief. I want to remind and invite everyone to join us tomorrow at 5:30 for our Pride Progress Festival. As part of the farmers market, we will be on the, the east end of the farmers market. There will be booths out. We have our partners, our booths. Wow. I see where this is. See, this is what happens when we get to this time of night. Everybody gets a little rummy. There will be booths. In relation, we have our partners coming out to join us. There will be face painting and balloons. There will be a short ceremony. The Pride Progress flag is already flying on the city flagpole, and we have our banners out in the, for the month, we have our banners out in the plaza as well. So we're looking forward to everyone coming out and joining us. And while you're out there, please buy some stuff from our vendors in the farmers market. Looking forward to seeing everyone.
All right, Council, does anyone else have a report to add? Okay.
Real quick,
Yeah.
went to the meeting with PSRC, and they returned the president, vice president at that meeting, and then we heard some words from some elected officials that was really inspiring and entertaining. So, and the location, if you haven't been to the Convention Center, Seattle Convention Center Summit, definitely take a walk over to that and go into that. That's an amazing place. So.
Great. Councilmember Stewart?
I sent out, I have a GMPB meeting on Thursday. There won't be any votes being taken, but I want to make sure, Scott, I think staff's always aware, but one of the topics that will be discussed is the process for reviewing and approving comprehensive plans. So once the meeting's out, I'll be sure and send out the links to that, because I think that will be very interesting, since that will all be happening here in just a minute.
Councilmember, if I may ask, GMPB stands for?
Growth Management Policy Board, which is different than the GMPC, which is specific to King County, and there's one for each county. The Growth Management Policy Board is all of the region, including all of the counties, not just King County. And so I think most of the things that go through GMPC also then have to come and be approved at the GMPB as well. Oh, I didn't know there would be a test on acronyms. That's always scary.
We're just, it's
All
our
right.
it's our continual push to avoid the using acronyms for those that are following along, not necessarily in the room. So thank you for sharing that.
All right. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
So moved?
Whoa, second.
Or second, whatever. Second,
Yeah.
I'll second. That's fine.
Sorry, okay. Not paying attention whatsoever.
Did you get that, Krista?
It's a free-for-all.
I think Roisin seconded. I think we had an initial.
I thirded.
Okay, third. Yeah. All right. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Great. Thanks. Good night, everybody.